feel like just when you get here, get to the airport, you see the national championship signs, and it's big. And that's where you wanted to be. You have two really good football teams that are about to square off against each other. And I think everything that you want this game to be is here. And, the media football will be centrally focused in Arizona, and it'll be Alabama and Clemson playing against each other. And I think it's a great look for college football. It's a great look for ESPN. It's football, first of all, but it's just a great feel right now to what this lead up is to this game.
Being a former D lineman, how impressive is this Bama D line and what this defense does for the Crimson Tide?
I don't think I've seen one as good. Watching college football, and individually there have been players that are better on other teams, but the depth and the type of guys that they play with, to have the ability to go 9 deep in college football in the D-line, and you don't have a drop-off when you're so-called second string, they like to call them 1Bs, come into the football game. It just gives you such an advantage, especially in this day and age with the spread offenses and trying to get guys on and off the field. And that's the one thing that they've adjusted to well, and I give Coach Saban credit. But also, the guys that are in the recruiting building, understanding that we need to change the type of athlete. The days of Terrence Cody are over. You can't have guys like that anymore because offenses exploit guys that can't stay in the game for 3 downs. And they've somehow figured out a way to manage to recruit those type of guys that can play 1 through 3 and be effective on those downs.
How does this defense compare to some of Alabama's really good defense, best defenses under Saban?
I'm not sure. I think back to 2011, and that was a real good defense. And you go back to 2009 when those guys were there also. If you looked for anything that you would say those teams had an advantage, you would probably look to the secondary. This is absolutely the best front seven that they've had since I've been watching them. But the defense as a whole, and when you think about football in this context, everybody's better because each unit has talent, but you feed off it. If you're getting number one in the nation in sacks, and when you have quarterbacks that are nervous, they tend to throw more interceptions. In turn, that makes your secondary look better. When you have linebackers playing against guys that are big, physical, and athletic, the lanes that they run through to tackle running backs are pretty substantial, and they can make those type of plays. So I think everything cohesively works together, and each unit makes the next unit better on this football team. And usually when you look at dominant defenses, that is the case. And you always hear the secondary saying we're good because of the D-line, and the D-line saying these guys are covering and quarterbacks are having to hold the ball longer, and that makes us look good. But I think all of the moving parts work well together on this football team, and that's why they've been like this on defense.
What's your impressions of Deshaun Watson?
I love him. We had a segment when I was doing SEC Now probably a month ago, and we had him, Derrick Henry, and Christian McCaffrey. And first we were asked to pick the Heisman winner, and I thought that would be Derrick Henry. And then they said, who would you start your football team with? Deshaun Watson. I think the most important position on the football field. And he's a guy that seems to have everything in perspective. He plays calm, cool, and collected. He understands that his team depends on him quite a bit to win games and also in clutch time situations. And he's had the ability to deliver. He's the unquestioned leader on the football team. All of the intangible things he has, not to mention he's usually the best player on the football field when he steps out there. So I think a lot of what Clemson has been able to accomplish in the past 2 years, even when he was out, and this year obviously being undefeated, it has a lot to do with that guy. But for any coach in the country, if you were to ask them, where do you want to start at as far as building the football team, if you could get the one guy that would stand out above all of the rest, they would tell you the quarterback position, unlike Greg McElroy was ever able to do.
What makes Saban as successful as he is?
You hear him talk about his process so much, and he's a great coach. He understands that things need to be put in perspective at every aspect of the season. There's a way you do things in the spring, there's a way you do things in the summer, and there's a way you approach the season. But I'm one of those guys that is not too far removed from the field. And look, guys, coaches are very important, but you're the worst coach in the world if you don't have the players. and they've had the opportunity to play with the best pieces and the best cards in the spades game you've ever seen for a long time. So I think a lot of that goes along with it, and he'll be the first to admit that these guys put in a tremendous amount of work, and they have to follow his direction in order to get to where they want to be. But I like giving these players credit too. Now, there's some special guys that have come through Alabama that makes up for sometimes when coaches don't do a tremendous job of coaching. They're just that much talented. But Nick Saban is, we're going to have the conversation eventually if he wins this national championship. Is he the best ever? Because of the landscape of college football, how difficult it is to win, and the type of level that the type of talent that's spread out throughout the country. It's tough to get to these games. Now, people in Alabama have grown accustomed to being around either this game or being one game away, but this is not normal. This is not something that you look forward to at the beginning of your season and says it's a failure if we don't win a national championship. It's a failure in Tuscaloosa not to be in this game, and that's the type of approach that he's taken. He likes that the fan base is that way, but to keep it in perspective, man, he's going for something that not a lot of guys can say they'll be able to do in their careers going forward or up until this point.
What kind of message did he give your LSU team in 2003 ahead of that game?
Well, it was a different dynamic. We didn't need any focus. It had been so long since we won a national championship at LSU. We were playing in New Orleans. His biggest advice was, guys, just keep your head in the game, because it was so many guys from Louisiana. Family was all around the whole week. So we just kind of had to shell ourselves off from cousins and uncles and aunts and those new cousins that you gain when you are in a moment like that, and just focus on what we had to do. Oklahoma came in, one of those teams. They had suffered a loss to Kansas State, so that took some of their luster. They were averaging 50 points a game, and we hung our head and we built ourselves on defense, and that's where he wanted the foundation to be. And we just took it as a challenge, and we had a chip on our shoulder because no one gave us a chance to win the game. And he kind of played into that. And whatever he needs to incentivize you, which usually is not much because he's done it all season and all season long, he uses. But it's just a way you prepare and a way you play when you're coached by Nick Saban. And if you don't prepare and play that way, you won't play for him.
You talked about the conversation, starting the best coach ever. If he wins this, is he, that'd be 4 in 7 years. Is he the best coach?
To me, the best coach ever. And personally speaking, and trying to take away the fact that I played for him and I have a great relationship for him, what he's been able to do, not just winning the national championships, the other years he's been one game away from winning them, and just the consistency and the level in which he's had his teams play at year in and year out has been tremendous. I mean, the fact that we're living in this moment, like you hear people talk about Bear Bryant. I didn't get a chance to see Bear Bryant coach, but when I hear people talk about Bear Bryant, I think of Bear Bryant as something that you can't talk about college football without Bear Bryant being involved in it. When we're gone, they'll talk about Nick Saban in that light, just like we do about Bear Bryant. When you go to Tuscaloosa, you see his office set up. Saban will have an office set up somewhere. He's a coach that's living and coaching with a statue at his school. So it's just a lot of things that are building towards him being in that conversation, if not being mentioned as the best to ever do it.
Is he the man most responsible for the SEC dominance in the last 10 years?
I think so. When you look at what he's done at LSU, and Urban Meyer had his run at Florida, and it's been a lot of successful teams. But the gauge and the barometer that has been set is national championships because of Nick Saban. He did it at LSU. Now he's going for his 4th at Alabama. So it's I talked about that earlier this year. Mark Richt, 75% winning record. Les Miles, 78% winning percentage. But they're not winning national championships, and they're not being judged by any other coach outside of the SEC other than Nick Saban. That's why fan bases get tired. That's why administrations get tired. Because when you look at what he's done in Tuscaloosa, that's the gauge that everybody is putting their coach at. And I think it's unfair and unrealistic for those programs to do that. But he set a standard in this league, and the relevance of the SEC right now, as we speak today, is being carried by Alabama, like it has been for the last few years. And I think a lot of other programs are very successful and very well respected throughout the country. But when you talk about Alabama, the expectation is for them to play in this game, and that's a precedent he set over there. last 10 years, 10, 11 years.
Kirk, we got